slap on that recording button. Hey, hi, hello, welcome back, Alexandrian Codex. I'm actually streaming and recording, and remember how I said I wasn't gonna play more Hearts of Iron 4? Well, that was a lie. I do not have the new DLC, and I'm not really interested in it. It looks meh, very meh, but for reasons that I can't possibly imagine, I want to play some Kaiserreich. Holy 4 vanilla is okay. As far as alternate history goes, the depth of the politics is really not there. But Kaiserreich, even though it's mostly on rails, right, it does such a better job of portraying politics up to a certain point. Internal politics, I mean. So we played as the United States of America before. If you've seen this series before, you know where I'm going with this, but we're doing it anyway. If you haven't, Kaiserreich is an alternate history set in beginning in 1936, because this game does, wherein the German Empire won the First World War. Where we're not playing as Germany or the Commune of France, the Union of Britain, which have succumbed to syndicalism. The Russian Empire is intact because Germany was intact and was able to intervene. No, we're gonna... as I turn this down... Not that quiet enough on my end. It looks fine on the recording end, but my headphones are blowing out. We're playing at the USA. The United States of America was almost left their policy of isolation to intervene in the Weltkrieg, but ultimately kept out of the war. This led to a victory of the Central Powers. Since then, the United States of America has struggled economically. European trade opportunities and the repayment of their loans to the Entente have been made impossible by a German victory. Still internationally regarded as a nobody, she now faces mounting internal dissent as the Republican-Democratic hegemony is challenged by two groups, the Syndicalists and the America First Party. With mounting crisis at home and only modest reputation overseas, things aren't looking good for the United States of America. Our president is Herbert Hoover. We have the Great Depression. Since the collapse of the New York stock market in 1925, the United States has been gripped by the Great Depression. In addition to massive economic woes plaguing America from this never-ending crisis, the Great Depression has given energy to both Long and Reed as they campaigned against one another and the establishment. Political crisis. The United States is in crisis. The Great Depression, which has been ravaging our nation for over a decade, has still not let up. Popular desperation has allowed the far left Socialist Party of America, the far right America First Party, to gain strength in recent years. Others look to MacArthur and the army as a way to solve both the Depression and radicalization. Many worry that the United States could descend into civil war, should our current situation not soon be resolved, or a radical presidential candidate win the upcoming 1936 election. Democracy triumphs. Though the temptation... These are choices you can make. We're not making those choices. No. So if you haven't taken a look at the world map before, and you're curious, Argentina is having a bit of a civil war. The English colonies and British colonies in Africa were handed off to the German Empire, with exception of South Africa, which is independent, I think, right now. Sultanate of Egypt is independent. A lot of the British Empire has been stripped away. In India, the British still have control over the Dominion of India, but the Princely Federation is independent, and the Bharatiya? Okay, I don't know. The Commune over here is a popular socialist movement. Do not ask me what's happening in China, because I do not know. They've recently changed the lore for China, and it's apparently a lot more fun to play now than it used to be, but I haven't kept up with any of that shit, so I have no idea what the fuck is happening in China. This looks different to me than the last time I played, which was like yesterday. This didn't have a patch in the last 2 days, did it? No, right? Let me just double check this real quick, hop on the Steam Workshop. No. No, it didn't. Okay, cool. German Empire has its sphere of influence here. The Austrian and Hungarian empires limping on. The Ottoman Empire is around, but still the sick man of Europe. And the Russian Republic, well, it has President Kerensky for now. We're playing as the good old US of A, because you gotta. Now, all of these countries are incredibly fun to play as, and are definitely, well, the major countries at least are fun to play as. But for totally unpolitical reasons, I want to play the United States. That is still too hot. That was a toss-up between playing Hoi 4 and Vicky 2, and I might hop into playing some Vicky 2 after this. By might, I mean I probably will. I might look into other political games, but I gotta say, this new splash screen, beautiful, beautiful. Kaiserreich, what if Germany had won World War I? Welcome to Kaiserreich, brought to you by the Kaiserreich team. Beautiful people. The Kaiserreich team proudly presents Kaiserreich beta version 0.11.2. Please note the following: the mod is designed with the assumption that the player will always annex all possible states and peace treaties, so make sure to do that. You can change the frequency of news events by toggling the icon at the top of the Decisions tab. You can see what naming systems, states, and victory points use, yada 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 yada. I'm sure I'll enjoy playing. So, let's set our national focus. First thing to do, we can choose between War Department expansion or the US Navy. And for no reason at all, I'm gonna go with the US Navy. The American Navy, an institution whose history is so deeply interwoven with that of the nation as a whole, has been in steady decline after years of neglect. No more. We must again turn our attention to naval affairs. And I'm gonna hop into our army here and just select all of these. Orders. And I can't get rid of the Panama Canal Division for some reason. I'm just gonna disband these. For no reason, then I'm gonna select all of our fleets. And again, no reason at all. Just go ahead, click on that delete button, and take all these air groups. And just, you know, we're downsizing. Again, no reason at all. Let's take a look at our military factories. You know, we don't need any of that. Why don't we, focus on transport planes. Transport planes are what America really needs right now. And you know what? Navy, we just need convoys. Lots and lots of convoys. Definitely the way forward. Now, infrastructure. Sir, our construction speed is horrible because of the Great Depression, free trade, and Herbert Hoover. But love it. Love it. I'm just gonna pop this in here. And in here. And here, 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 and here. And here, and here. And here, and here. Now, we are not gonna finish any of, or most of these. I would be happy if we finished any of those. And, yeah. No reason to look too deeply into why I'm building military factories in this part of the United States. No reason at all. We will look at electronic mechanical engineering. We live at an age when electrical machines can no longer only warm and light us, but help us think and communicate. Electronics will be key to military intelligence in the coming century. Basic machine tools. A variety of newly developed milling machines can be used in military production. From the small and versatile types available to any machine shop, to the large advanced models that push technological limits. Improved methods and materials will allow us to construct buildings, both civilian and military, faster. Construction 1, and for the last one, synthetic oil. Fuel storage. Mass storage of fuel requires a complex set of tanks, pipes, and valves to ensure it's both secure and readily available. Great, we'll do that. Unassigned divisions. listen, Panama Canal Division, let's make an army out of you. Let's put, oh, you know, Pat in charge, and then we'll put this in an army. We don't really need to, and we'll just put MacArthur in charge. And we'll just tell you to hang out down here in Panama. We have insufficient resources, not enough rubber to make those planes, but you know, I think it'll be fine. I'm not worried about it at all. So we have the Great Depression, which is the consumer goods factories means the higher that number is, the more of our industries dedicated just to making consumer goods, not new industries, not our Navy, not stuff for our military. So you want that number to be low. You want negative modifiers for that. Naturally, a slower construction speed is bad, and it's kind of self-evident what it means. Production efficiency cap means that over time, you can see here, we get better at building things the longer we're building that thing and just that thing. This is meant to represent the amount of time and effort and stuff and retraining that goes into developing a new tool or a new product. If you have a assembly line, everybody on that line does one specific thing, and they're very good at that one specific thing. If you switch out that thing for an entirely new product, well, everyone on the line has to be retrained. Even if they have superficially similar roles, you gotta go through a retooling effort. So the production efficiency cap is given all available technologies and techniques as is the most efficient that industry can be. And the current efficiency modifier is how efficient it currently is. So we just retooled our entire military industrial complex to building transport planes, and we're not very good at it, so we are at 10% of a maximum of 35%. This is really lowering that. Factory output is pretty self-evident. It's how much our military and civilian factories produce. Any malice to that is bad. Political crisis, political power cost, we'll get into that. Yeah, political power is basically your ability to get things done, to implement changes, to change your government, your staff, to enact policies. And, you know, we're not too hot on that. Our weekly stability is dropping. Stability is kind of self-evident. Represents, in the text here, the people's support for the current government. High stability makes political changes easier to push and helps the economy run more smoothly. Great. And weekly war support. Again, kind of self-evident. It represents the willingness of people to prosecute a war to the finish. Enacting many laws and preparing your nation for an ongoing war effectively requires high war support. Now, we could start looking into improving our military, but you know, for some reason, that just is not a priority for me right now. So we'll jump this up to speed 4. Go ahead and unpause. Now, we're part of the Legation Council. The Legation Council is a body comprised of representatives from the United States, Germany, the Empire of Japan, the Austrian Empire, and Flanders-Wallonia. Really, I didn't know Flanders-Wallonia was on it. They normally break apart so early, that's why I didn't notice. Basically, we vote on policies controlling these trade ports over here in China, and we reap benefits from this. In 1936, the United States of America is gripped by an unrelenting crisis. Although able to avoid the horrors of the Weltkrieg, which allowed its prosperity to continue well into the 1920s, German victory, followed by French and British revolutions, led to the Wall Street crash of 1925. This sent the United States spiraling into the Great Depression and allowed the Berlin stock market to take its place at the forefront of the world economy. The election of Herbert Hoover in 1928, while initially promising, failed entirely to reverse the decline of the American economy. By 1936, the country had spent over a decade in the midst of the worst financial crisis it had ever seen. This has fueled the rise of radical parties in America, from the far-left Socialist Party of America to the far-right America First Party. Hoover's contentious re-election by means of the House of Representatives in 1932 and the ongoing Great Depression means that these problems are likely to be unresolved anytime soon. Unlikely to be resolved anytime soon. Many throughout the country fear the upheaval that would result should one of the extreme parties come to power, or should the Depression continue unabated. God save America. I think we can jump to speed 5, because we're not doing jack shit for a while here. Really, there isn't much happening worldwide. The legation cities were formed in 1928 as a result of our intervention in the Jili-Fengxian conflict that was soon going to spill out into open war between the two other powers in the Far East, Germany and Japan. While we obviously wished to end the conflict, we also found it in our power to create a lasting solution to the imperial rivalry in China, as well as push our open door policy. So we forced the other powers to merge their concessions in China into one conglomerate, consisting of all the official concessions in China as well as a 30-mile neutral zone. The legation cities, officially known as the International Mandate for the Chinese Concessions, also hosts a forum, the Legation Council, for the various powers with Chinese interests to resolve disputes and work together. Naturally, we have a vote on this council, and we are often the deciding factor between Japanese and Germans, with the secondary powers mostly playing second fiddle to us. Our voice is usually one that speaks for keeping the status quo of an open door to China for all foreign powers, which hopefully lets everyone benefit without having to involve themselves with individual Chinese factions. To American citizens, the legation cities represents not only a great way to get rich, but a shining example of an American forward thinking and our commitment to peace. A perfect arrangement so we get through to the open door, which lowers our consumer goods factories. Very good. Republicanism in Russia has a small problem. President Kerensky has just been shot and killed while on his way to the Senate. The assailant was taken down by the police, but the goals and intentions of the attacker are unknown. Despite his massive unpopularity amongst the Russian people due to botched land reform and ineffective rule, Kerensky was nevertheless able to hold the country together for years. His death has thrown Russia into chaos. The senators are discussing a possible replacement to Kerensky. New coalitions are being formed, both the left and the right, while military men like Denikin, Wrangel, and Kornilov are just one step away from returning to dissolved democracy and save Mother Russia. Russia is also a very fun power to play as. Russia is, Germany is, Commune of France and Union of Britain are okay. French Republic is okay. Middle Africa is interesting. I hear Brazil is interesting. Never played as them though. Oh, we have a decision available. We can hire foreign naval advisors. No, I'm just gonna go ahead and click off of those. And these, that. We are never, ever going to need to do those. Now what I'm waiting for right now is for a country, any country, to go to war. And I have until really the end of 1936 for this to happen. The Totalist Charter. Mussolini, Valois, and Outremer and other interested parties have arrived in Birmingham today to discuss their common ground. It's been agreed that Maximism, Cyrenalianism, National Syndicalism all share three basic principles of the state's primacy in the socialist struggle: the role of national identity within the state and the importance of a strong central authority to preserve and build socialism. The Charter also claims the socialist state is the final stage of human development, and that democracy is not necessary to achieve socialism. These statements have drawn great criticisms from other socialist factions, who gave it the name totalism, as a play on totalitarian socialism, which has been eagerly accepted by mostly who added it to the manifesto's name, attributing it to their total commitment to socialism. The people must reject this madness. Edward VIII crowned as King of Great Britain. George V, the last King of Great Britain and Ireland to have ruled the home islands themselves, has passed, while in exile in Canada. The first Windsor King, his reign shall be remembered with sorrow and sadness, as during it Britain lost both the Weltkrieg and its homeland. The crown was inherited by Edward, Prince of Wales, who now stylizes himself as Edward VIII. King Edward is a vengeful and ambitious man, and not on good terms with Prime Minister Mackenzie King. He lives on the goal of avenging his father and reconquering the British Islands, and thus is quite popular among British exiles in Canada, amongst others. Little Eddie boy. Historically, quite an interesting character. Had some concerning ties to fascist movements. Now, I intend to, in this playthrough, to read more about some of the characters that we'll run into. Now, Herbert Hoover. Why not? We got time, right? Hoover. Tell me about Hoover. Yes, the Hoover Company. No. Hoover should not. Tell me about good old HH. Herbert Hoover was an American engineer, businessman, and politician who served as the 31st President of the United States from 1929 to 1933. A member of the Republican Party, he held office during the onset of the Great Depression. Prior to serving as president, he led the Commission for Relief in Belgium, served as the director of the U.S. Food Administration, and served as a third Secretary of Commerce. Hoover was born to a Quaker family in West Branch, Iowa. Took position with the London Mining Company after graduating from Stanford University in 1895 after the outbreak of World War I. He became the head of the Commission for Relief in Belgium, an international relief organization that provided food to occupied Belgium. With the United States entered the war, President Woodrow Wilson appointed Hoover to lead the Food Administration, and Hoover became known as the country's food czar. After the war, Hoover led the American Relief Administration, which provided food to the inhabitants of Central and Eastern Europe. Hoover's wartime service made him a favorite of many progressives, and he unsuccessfully sought the Republican nomination in the 1920 presidential election. After the 1920 election, newly elected Republican President Warren G. Harding appointed Hoover as the Secretary of Commerce. Hoover continued to serve under President Calvin Coolidge after Harding died in 1923. Hoover was an unusually active and visible cabinet member, becoming known as a Secretary of Commerce and Undersecretary of all other departments. He was influential in the development of radio and air travel and led the federal response to the Great Mississippi Flood in 1927. Hoover won the Republican nomination in the 1928 presidential election and decisively defeated the Democratic candidate, Al Smith. The stock market crashed shortly after Hoover took office, and the Great Depression became the central issue of his presidency. Hoover pursued a variety of policies in an attempt to lift the economy, but opposed directly involving federal government and relief efforts. In the midst of an ongoing economic crisis, Hoover was decisively defeated by Democratic nominee Franklin D. Roosevelt in the 1932 presidential election. Hoover enjoyed one of the longest retirements of any former president, and he authored numerous works. After leaving office, Hoover became increasingly conservative and strongly criticized Roosevelt's foreign policy and New Deal domestic agenda. In the 1940s and 50s, Hoover's public reputation was rehabilitated, as he served for Presidents Harry S. Truman and Dwight D. Eisenhower in various assignments, including as chairman of the Hoover Commission. Nevertheless, Hoover is generally not highly ranked in the historical rankings of presidents of the United States. Can't imagine why. Can't imagine why. After the Weltkrieg, as British Raj collapsed into turmoil and warfare, the neighboring kingdom of Afghanistan took advantage of this as an opportunity to seize Peshawar and Quetta, both border regions of the Dominion. Quetta, Peshawar. Quetta, Peshawar. However, the Afghanis government's attempts to modernize over the last decades have been met with fierce resistance from conservative elements within the country. King Amanullah Khan now hopes to use the turmoil in Delhi following the death of King George to his advantage. By repeating the success of the Fourth Anglo-Afghan War, the king hopes to silence the conservative opposition and bring new lands to the crown. However, international experts do not put many hopes in the tiny mountain nation winning this conflict. electoral gridlock in France. The Commune of France is the world's leading syndicalist nation. United is a federation of city communes and directed by the Comité de Salut Public, the chief executive. Ever since its inception, however, the Second Commune was not uniform in its policy. Numerous factions arose, each with their own idea of which path France should take. It is a time for revenge against Germany, and the world revolution closes in. The CGT election in 1936 is said to be very important. It was so important, in fact, that none of the four factions could acquire a majority. Much like before the election, a coalition must be found, but how will this change the shape of the Commune's politics? Only the men in the CSP itself know. Black Monday. On the 3rd of February 1936, the Berlin Stock Exchange stopped sinking. It plunged. Fueled by the instability of the market panic, selling erupted as soon as the stock market opened on Monday morning. It took well into the night for teleprompters to stop sputtering out the results of what became known as Black Monday. When the results had been analyzed, it was clear the situation had only gotten worse. The shock of this unprecedented economic catastrophe will, to no doubt, be felt all over the world. The German Golden Age has ended. For now, at least. Despite the political turmoil and ineffectual economic relief programs, it seemed to many as if the economy of the United States might finally be undergoing a slow recovery after the Wall Street crash in 1925. Black Monday has put an end to such hopes, and has sounded the death knell for an already ailing economy. Republicans and Democrats have both pledged to fix the economy, should they win the election, though public confidence in them is rapidly waning. Both Reid and Long have rallied hard against the corrupt banking and political sectors, which they blame for allowing the crash to happen. This is not our year. The Great Depression just gets worse. A coalition ticket. The 1936 election is looking to be one of the most contentious in American history. Many politicians within the upper circle of the Republican and Democratic parties fear that a victory by the Socialist Party of America, or the American First Party, would mean the end of America and the American way of life. In order to avoid this, a plan has been proposed within the halls of power to form a coalition ticket between Republican and Democratic parties, with progressive Senator Floyd Olson of Minnesota the presidential candidate. This plan is unlikely to be popular with lower-ranking members of the party, but it may be the only thing that can prevent radical parties from gaining strength. Nah, a coalition would debase the democratic system. Even though all parties are coalitions from the get-go, we'll just say, nah. You don't need a coalition. Definitely not. Now, the only difference it makes if you are planning on joining the CSA or the AFP in the Civil War is, I think a coalition lets the United States hold on to New England. At least it did in my last test playthrough, which was a surprise. Normally Canada vassalizes New England up here. The United States Navy, long the darling child of the American defense establishment, has been a strong force in the global maritime affairs for nearly 50 years. A rival to even the vaunted Kaiserreich Marine and Royal Navy at their height in the Weltkrieg, has defended America's shores and sallied forth to spread stability and democracy for nigh on 160 years. From John Paul Jones' raids on the British mainland to the Battle of Manila Bay, the Navy has provided our security, needed by the Republic from those that would infringe upon our independence from beyond the seas. All is not well in the modern day, however. The Navy's ships are old. Her flagships, Weltkrieg-era dreadnoughts, even as Germany and syndicalists engage in new naval arms race and the tattered remains of the Royal Navy lick their wounds, new carriers have been commissioned. But they're nowhere near ready to take on the Imperial Japanese fleet. The Marine Corps fares far better, hardened as they are by constant action and tropical locals, but they're small, only have a few regiments strong, and are powerless to effect increasing tension at home from far-flung island bases. The Honor Guard in Washington, D.C. look increasingly powerless as violence in the nation's capital increases. Our white ships might dominate the waves, but many question whether it will be enough to face the gathering storm on the horizon. let's reintroduce the Garner-Wagner bill. Originally vetoed in 1932, the economic situation has deteriorated to the point where unemployment relief efforts are seen as the only way to prevent widespread collapse. President Hoover has indicated to the Democrats in Congress that this time he will not veto the Garner-Wagner relief bill. With assurances made by President Hoover that he will not veto the bill, Democratic Senator Robert Wagner and Speaker of the House John Nance Garner have reintroduced their unemployment relief legislation package. Many in Congress feel that the package does not go nearly far enough, while others wonder how America, in the midst of a massive economic crisis, will possibly ever pay for it. The presence of senators from the AFP and SPA also complicate things immensely. Even with Hoover's pledge, it's unknown if the Garner-Wagner has... Is it Wagner? I mean, we're Americans, so I guess it's Wagner, even though it's Wagner. Has a real chance of passing. We'll see. The Austrian Empire withdraws from Italy. Really? Okay. Interesting. That does not often happen, I think. It's clear that Black Monday has hit the Austrian Empire hard. The Austria-Hungarian Reichsmarine. Let's try that again. Reichskriegsmarine today announced he was recalling divisions stationed in Italian territory, unable to afford the financial burden of keeping them safe from the Socialist Republic of Italy. For good or for ill, the Italian Republic is now effectively independent of Austrian domination, at least until Austrians regain their full strength, decide whether or not their interests in the Italian peninsula are worth regaining. Many in the Italian Republic have expressed worry about whether or not this will leave them exposed to attack by the Socialist Republic of Italy, a move which would plunge Italy into civil war once again. Crime sprees sweep the nation. As America spirals ever deeper into chaos, there have been wave after wave of crimes throughout this country. Many of these criminals are getting sensationalist news stories about their activities, especially gangsters like John Dillinger and the scandalous Bonnie and Clyde. Thankfully, the Bureau of Investigation have been working hard to catch these criminals, bring some order back to America. Of course, the AFP and the SPA have been attributing these crimes to moral decline and robber baronies, respectively. Stop right there, criminal scum. Still one of my favorite descriptor texts in any mod. You get me good with an Oblivion reference. No doubt. Now what I'm really... Anhui has declared war on the Nanjing clique. Ah, this is falling apart. Okay. And you are... Alright, great. Marshal Wu Beihu backs Anqing. Following the death of Marshal Sun Chongfang earlier this year and the subsequent collapse of the Qing authority, few expected Imperial Minister of the Army Wu Peifu, the real power behind the throne in Beijing, to take over military action. At this morning, he and the Assembly President Gao Xiaokun... Xiaokun? It's Cao Cao, so it's Xiaokun, announced their formal support of the provincial government of Anhui, led by Chen Xiaoyuan. Wu and Cao have long chafed over the German oversight placed on their government in 1927, and their support of Governor Chen telegraphed to the world that they were casting off German influence. While full deployment of the Qing army is unlikely given the ever-present threat of Fengtian attack from the north, limited numbers of Qing troops are already mobilizing to destroy the enemies of Governor Chen and Beijing's new national order. The chips start to fall. Ah, yeah, okay, don't wanna side with you. Interesting. Oh, hey, decision available. We can vote on the legation cities are cutthroat, many factions vie for power. American influence is higher than anyone else's? What? Ooh, we lose manpower? Hell yeah. Let's send more troops to the legation cities. Absolutely. Very important that we do this. Sanqing Clique has declared war on the Nanjing Clique. The left, Kuomintang, have revolted, so I wanna just send you a lend-lease. For no reason at all. I have 5,136 of these, so we'll just say 5,136. Once, got 280 Springfields, 1903, just send that once. I got 37 75mm guns, we'll just send those once. You don't need convoys. Yes. Perfect. Just take all those guns we could use to make an army and send them somewhere else. Just get them the hell out of here. As expected, the early challenges to the Garner-Wagner bill have come from the AFP and SPA. Huey Long and its AFP senators have demanded a vast increase in the social security provisions the bill provides. Provisions most other senators say America can never afford. Jack Reed and the SPA, meanwhile, say the bill doesn't do enough to protect the average worker, particularly from exploitation by struggling corporations. Both parties have attracted a lot of media attention, adding to the general sense of disorder and tension in Congress. Both of these are real people, naturally. Let's read about Huey Long. Fucking fascinating. Huey Pierce Long, Jr., nicknamed the Kingfish, was an American politician who served as the 40th governor of Louisiana from 1928 to 1932 and was a member of the United States Senate from 1932 until his assassination in 1935. As a political leader of Louisiana, he commanded wide networks of supporters and was willing to take forceful and dictatorial action. He established a long-term political dominance and dynasty of the Long family. During his years in power, large expansions were made in infrastructure, education, and healthcare. Long was notable among Southern politicians for avoiding race baiting and white supremacy. He sought to improve conditions of impoverished blacks as well as impoverished whites. Under Long's leadership, hospitals and educational institutions were expanded. A system of charity hospitals were set up that provided healthcare for the poor, and massive highway construction and fee bridges brought an end to rural isolation. A Democrat, an outspoken left-wing populist, Long denounced the wealthy urban Baton Rouge and D.C. elites, oligarchs, and the banks. Initially a supporter of FDR during his first 100 days in office, Long eventually came to believe that Roosevelt's New Deal policies were insufficient compromise and did not do enough to alleviate the issues of the poor or tackle the Depression. As a result, he developed his own solution, called the Share Our Wealth program, which would establish a net asset tax, the earnings of which would be redistributed so as to curb poverty and homelessness epidemic nationwide during the Great Depression. Fucking great idea. Long's Share Our Wealth plan was established February 23, 1934 with the motto, "Every man a king." To stimulate the economy, Long advised extensive federal spending on public works, schools and colleges, and old age pensions. Long argued that his plan would enable everyone to have a car, a radio, and a home worth $5,000. Long split with Roosevelt in June of 1933 to plan his own presidential bid for 1936, in alliance with the influential Roman Catholic priest and right-wing populist radio commentator Father Charles Coughlin. Long, however, was assassinated in 1935, and his national movement soon faded. His legacy, however, continued in Louisiana through his wife, Senator Rose McConnell Long, his son, Senator Russell B. Long, his brothers Governor Earl Kemp Long, and U.S. Representative George S. Long, as well as many other more distant relatives, including U.S. Representative Giles Gillis William Long. He remains a controversial figure in Louisiana history. In United States history, for that sake, Huey is a fucking fascinating character. He obviously, from the text here, favored a lot of policies that were seemingly quite socialist, but his partnership with Charles Coughlin suggests that he was likely more of a national socialist perhaps of the NSDP flavor. Who? Oh yeah, Jack Reed. Not that Jack Reed. Not that Jack Reed. Back. John Jack Silas Reed. Yes, this is the person I am looking for. Ah, here we go. John Jack Silas Reed was an American journalist, poet, and communist activist. Reed first gained prominence as a war correspondent during the First World War and later became best known for his coverage of the October Revolution in Petrograd, Russia, after he wrote his book 10 Days That Shook the World. In our timeline, Reed died in 1920. Reed was determined to return to the United States but fell ill on September 25th. At first thought to have influenza, he was hospitalized 5 days later and diagnosed with spotted typhus. Bryant spent all of her time with him, but there were no medicines to be obtained because of the Allied blockade. His mind started to wander and he lost the use of his right side of his body and could no longer speak. His wife was holding his hand when he died in Moscow on October 17, 1920. After a hero's funeral, his body was buried at the Kremlin Wall necropolis. He's one of 3 Americans honored by being buried there. So Jack Reed never went to Russia, because Russia never fell to the Soviets. So instead, Jack stayed home. Jack organized at home. Hell yes, accept my Lend-Lease. Can I interest you in perhaps a second Lend-Lease? No, I can modify this on... Cool. How am I doing? Negative infantry equipment, love it. Negative artillery, love it. So I want to see. I want to send you planes, actually. Can I do that? Yes, I can. Alright. I want to send you 400 of these. 600 of these. Now, I'm mostly just throwing these planes away. I'm really just throwing most of this stuff away at this point. 32 of these, 24 of these. Just throwing the entire arsenal of the United States to an insurgent Chinese radical socialist movement. That probably will not survive, but God bless you. I hope you do. I've never seen them survive or win. Normally I end up backing either the Baryatsia commune or someone else, but we'll try you this time. It seems that the economic woes have gone down hard in the legation cities, and they've decided to outsource much of their security operations to the Japanese to keep their economy afloat. While there's little we can do to stop them, it's been an uproar in the council over shifting balance of power, and with calls for Japan to not abuse their position in the city. Oh, I'm sure they won't. I'm sure it'll be fine. What could possibly go wrong? Paramilitary groups forming. With violence and instability sweeping the country, the America First Party and Socialist Party of America began to form various paramilitary militias, which they claim are necessary to protect the people. The AFP have called their group the Minutemen, while the SPA's the Red Guard. Seen patrolling their strongholds and party rallies, these well-armed and equipped paramilitary units have already engaged in scattered, though extremely violent conflict. We believe the paramilitaries are modifying civilian firearms, and the FBI's attempts to seize weapons stockpiles are too slow to stop gun runners. This could turn very bad, very fast. Here we go. Here's Charles Coughlin. 3 years ago, Father Charles Coughlin began a weekly radio broadcast in America, and now has an audience of over 50 million people. He's a raving anti-Semite. He claims the syndicalist revolution in France was fomented by the Jew, and that the Berlin Stock Exchange market crash is an international conspiracy of Jewish bankers. Somehow, people still tune in. His hate speech will not be tolerated by the Church, and the Pope is expected to make a decision whether to ask the United States government to shut down his broadcast, so that his hateful message cannot reach the public. So we can either say, I hate what he says, but I defend his right to say it, well, lose a little bit of stability, and boost radical socialism and authoritarian Democrats a little bit, or shut them down, we lose political power. Political power, again, is only used to implement reforms, whereas stability is a lot harder to gain back. So I'm going to defend its right to say it, just to lower our stability even more. Cuban tariffs. I don't recall seeing this before. Though the Platt Agreement, through the Platt Agreement, which governed Cuban-American trade and relations was annulled. Oh no, though, was annulled, and its successor requires only minor trade concessions to the part of the Cubans. A delegation has arrived from Cuba to petition the abrogation of one portion of the heavy current treaty. As part of the new Treaty of Cuban-American Relations, Cuba is required to levy substantial tariffs against non-American products. This, the Cubans argue, has caused great economic harm and contributed to the near collapse of its government. To prevent another incident, such as that which recently befell their nation, they say they must concede our position on this issue. Oh. They're unionistas. Okay, interesting. I'm going to say no. After weeks of negotiations, a number of establishment senators have broken ranks over the upcoming vote on the Garner-Wagner bill, most notably Robert Wagner, one of the bill's proposers, who says he will not vote for the bill unless protections for federal unemployment insurance are re-added. Many other Democrat and Republican senators are concerned about the influence of the AFP and SPA, claim they will not vote for the bill if any concessions are made to either group. Though others say that this is not courting, or that not courting either of them will make passage even more difficult, if not impossible. President Hoover will need to intervene in order to save the bill. Nah, we're going to side with the establishment. We don't need these outsiders, right? Compromise with socialists? Nah. We'll never do that. Syndicalists take over Australasia. The recent election in the Australasian Confederation saw a victory for the Labour Party led by John Curtin. But within days after his victory, radical elements within the Labour Party rose up and took control. These radicals are loyal to the Australasian Council of Trade Unions, the ECTU being the most prominent syndicalist faction in the Antipodes. Antipodes? Yeah, in hiding since the Melbourne Commune uprising in 1924 and the subsequent suppression of unions by Governor-General William Birdwood's government. The coup has left the nation in shock, with syndicalist loyalists already taking to the streets across Australasia to prevent demonstrations and outbreaks of violence. How alarming! How terrifying! Oh darn! The death of Pope Pius XI. All of Christendom mourns the death of His Holiness Pius XI, who died following a heart attack after having been in declining health for the last several years. Something which has rapidly worsened following Black Monday. The Holy Father will soon be interred with the rest of his predecessors in the tomb of the popes. Until a new pope can be chosen, the papal state will be ruled by the College of Cardinals in Rome. This secession of His Holiness is made all the more important due to the Catholic Church's role in governing the reborn papal state, as well as its vehement opposition to syndicalism, a force which has divided Italy and seeks once again to unify the Italian peninsula. Long and Reed are furious. Both Huey Long's AFP and Jack Reed's SPA have reacted with fury, It had President Hoover's endorsement of establishment senators. They vowed to sink the Garner-Wagner bill, claiming that the public is being deceived by a corrupt government which refuses to recognize the reality of America. While the parties have gained a considerable boost in support from their base, Democratic and Republican fortunes have improved somewhat. There's a feeling they both have a better chance of going into the next election, provided that the bill actually passes. It's fine. It's fine. More AFP members are announcing congressional bids. While there have been a number of lawmakers from the America First Party in its brief life, particularly in the South, the 1936 election represents an unprecedented number of people registering to run for office under the banner of the AFP, and just as many, if not more, nationwide, pledging to vote for them. St. Patrick's Day flood. March 16, 1936, warmer than usual temperatures led to a melting of large amounts of snow and ice on the upper Allegheny and, oh god, I can't say this word, Monongahela rivers? The rivers and their tributaries already overflowed their banks and were soon threatening the city of Pittsburgh. March 17th, the waters reached the flood stage of 25 feet. Then, overnight, heavy rain caused the water to rise even higher. On March 18th, the water peaked at about 46 feet, 21 feet above flood stage. This is the worst disaster in all of the city's history. Are we talking about Pittsburgh? Yeah. And local authorities have already requested federal aid. They'll have to stop it themselves. Who needs stability? Not me. We don't need stability. Fuel storage and electronic mechanical engineering are done, and great. Let us get mechanical computing. Constructing machines capable of advanced differential analysis will radically change what sort of machine-assisted calculations can be made. And let's go in for synthetic oil experiments. To reduce dependence on oil, processes to manufacture substitutes from other substances and materials can be researched. First International. Delegates from socialist nations and political movements from around the world have gathered in Paris today for the latest in a series of world congresses. While the mantle of the Third International was taken up by the Communards after the Russian Civil War, the ideological tenor of the event promises to be very different. With syndicalist parties being the newly dominant force of the far left, delegates were greeted by a military parade, an exhibition of avant-garde art, and finally a speech by the chairman of the CSP. At the top of the agenda is the spread of the revolution to Asia and North America, ongoing conflict in Spain, policy on colonialism, and the requirements for membership of Third International's military alliance. Okay, the Nanjing clique has capitulated. Alright. You haven't lost yet. It's just throwing you everything I have. Yeah, I have transport planes. I have what? Zero transport planes? I seem to have 0 transport planes. And convoys. Yep. Yep. Good. Good, yes. Still working on the first of these military factories. Like I said, I'll be lucky if I get 2 done by the end of the year. Pius XII has been elected as new Pope. Catholic faithful in Rome breathed a sigh of relief as the Sistine Chapel's chimney billowed forth white smoke, signifying the election of a new Pope. A short time later, it was announced that the pious and popular Eugenio Cardinal Pacelli had become His Holiness Pope Pius XII. Leader of the Catholic Church and head of the state of the Papal States. It's anticipated he will continue the policies of a predecessor whose pontifical name he has taken. Good luck, Your Holiness. Good luck. Increasing radicalization, with Democrats and Republicans fighting amongst themselves, as usual, more and more Americans are feeling alienated from the traditional Big Two and are flocking to radical AFP and Socialist Party throughout the country. In these dark times, the distinction between genuine social reform and graft is hard to distinguish. Those under the radical banner and their political enclaves have received some social welfare, share our wealth donations from the AFP and international red aid from the SPA. The party machine of these radicals utilizes mass media to a much stronger degree than either the Republicans or the Democrats. It's looking more and more like the 1936 election will come down to Reed or Long. Minus 15 stability. Ah, yeah. Who needs it? Who needs it? We're just at negative 46. Now, a downside to having low stability is it just completely tanks our economy. The bill passed? What? I thought I made the choices to make it fail. Okay. The vote was incredibly close. The Garner-Wagner bill has passed the Congress. People throughout the United States are celebrating welcome relief to the country's disastrous economic situation, though many within the government are wondering, how will the bill be paid for? Okay, we get political power, get some stability. The Great Depression is lessened a little bit. Jump right into the Hawking Plan. A junior Democratic senator has proposed a plan, which would see the Garner-Wagner bill being funded by an increased corporate income tax. The plan is controversial with some, but it might just give the economy a boost it desperately needs. Free trade, isolation. I could change these? I could change this. I'm like, I can change this? No. I can change the chief of staff. Can I switch out any of these? No, these are all done by election. Yep. Let's go with the chief of the Air Force. Yes, vertical development doctrine with Nathan Bedford Forrest. That's what America needs right now. Yep. 1936 Stanley Cup. Two teams have made it to the 1936 Stanley Cup. The Toronto Maple Leafs, making their 6th appearance, and the Detroit Red Wings, making their 2nd appearance and still hungry to win their 1st cup. With only a brief interruption at the first game of Detroit, with demonstrators by the Socialist Party of America disrupting proceedings outside the stadium, the series has gone off without a hitch and captivated audience both countries. Who will take home the cup this year? I'll give you a hint, it's not going to be Detroit. Because it's never fucking Detroit. It's never Detroit. It's always Toronto. Toronto has vanquished Detroit in a 4-game series for the Stanley Cup, bringing the Canadian King their 4th victory in the finals. Once again, the kid line of Charlie Conacher, Harvey Busher Jackson, and Joe Primo has brought the Stanley Cup to Toronto. We'll get them next time. Yep. Absolutely. There will definitely be a next time. Who's the most popular party right now? The AFP is at 16%. More SPA members announcing congressional bids. While there have been a number of lawmakers from the Socialist Party of America in the past few decades, particularly in the Steel Belt, the 1936 election represents an unprecedented number of people registering to run for office under the banner of the SPA, and just as many, if not more, nationwide, pledging to vote for them. Special election in Washington. Following the death of Senator Wesley Lloyd, a special election has been called in Washington to fill his seat. Frontrunners are SPA activist John F. McKay and Democratic Congressman John Main Coffey. Let's see if I can... Are these... I'm assuming these were real people. Senator Wesley Lloyd. Oh, yeah. Wesley Lloyd was a United States representative from Washington. Born in Arvonia, Kansas on July 24, 1883, attended public schools, Baker University in Baldwin, Kansas, and Washburn College in Topeka, Kansas. Lloyd engaged in newspaper work in Kansas City and Topeka. Graduated from Kansas City Law School in 1906, admitted to the bar in the same year he moved to Tacoma, Washington. and engaged in newspaper work until 1908, when he commenced the practice of law in Tacoma. Served as a corporal in the United National Guard from 1918 to 1920, elected as a Democrat to the 73rd and 74th Congresses, and served from March 4, 1933, until his death in Washington, D.C. on the 10th of January, 1936. He is interred in Tacoma Cemetery in Tacoma, Washington. John... That's not how you spell John, Alex. It doesn't have an F in the middle. Why am I having... It has an H. There we go. My fingers were off of home row. McKay. Let's see, which of these John McKays were alive in the right time? Let's type in Washington. Hold on, socialist. Claude McKay? No. There was an attorney born in 1956. Have no idea who the hell this John McKay is. Oh, here we go. It's in the Kaiserreich subreddit. One of the events... Given that the only thing we know about him is he was a member of the SPA, I propose he replaced to be in the special election by a memorable figure in Washington politics. John McKay was a Montana state senator and congressional candidate in the 1920s who moved to Washington and became, if not a perennial candidate, then a very frequent one. His legislative highlight is probably trying to sabotage Montana's version of the Espionage Act by proposing a bill criminalizing syndicalism under a definition of so broad it would make every meaning of anybody or any kind of coercion by a boss towards worker be criminal syndicalism. Okay, so might be a fictional character. I'm gonna go with John F. McKay for no reason. Or Senator A. Harry Moore? Let's learn about Senator Moore here. Senator A. Harry Moore. Arthur Harry Moore was a Democrat who was the 39th governor of New Jersey, serving 3 terms between 1926 and 1941. He was the longest-serving New Jersey governor in the 20th century, and the only New Jersey governor to be elected to serve 3 separate non-consecutive terms. Moore represented New Jersey in the United States Senate from January 3, 1935 to January 17, 1938, when he stepped down to begin his 3rd term as governor of New Jersey. Following his resignation in order to run for governor, a special election has been called in New Jersey to select his replacement. The front-runners are Democrat John Gerald Milton, AFP spokesman Charles Lindbergh. I'm gonna not go with Lindbergh. I'm gonna go with John Gerald Milton, who I don't know anything about. Look, I want to weaken the position that the United States is in. I do not want to strengthen the AFP. For hopefully self-explanatory reasons. Good God, 1936 goes on for a while. Arthur Horner elected chairman of the TUC. 1936 Trade Union Congress, and the Union of Britain was made out to be decisive. Long-term chairman of the Trade Union Congress, Philip Snowden, declared his resignation, causing 4 major factions in the Union, Maximists, Autonomists, Federationists, and Congregationists, to butt heads over the position. As the dust settled, Arthur Horner, current General Secretary, has been chosen as Snowden's successor. Really? How odd. He and his Federationists are in favor of keeping the status quo, a position getting harder and harder to maintain in this changing world. Wow, it's so rare I don't see Mosley take over. Okay. Maybe let's go until the end of April and put in a cut. Yeah. I was thinking, I can go until the end of 1936, but it's been an hour, and I don't want these to go on forever. Okay, so I like concentrated industry more than dispersed industry. Dispersed industry has a higher production efficiency base, makes your factories less vulnerable to bombs, and converts things more quickly, whereas concentrated industry just lets you build more factories and has a higher factory output and same dockyard output. I don't know. I can see a real argument for dispersed industry, but I always go for concentrated industry. Focusing our industrial production to a few key sites will allow us to dramatically improve efficiency. Yeah, we're still not done with that first factory. God, it's so slow at the beginning of the game. We're only at -9 construction speed right now. It's not horrible. I mean, it's bad. It's bad. Ang King has declared war on left Kuomintang. Listen, buddy, I've given you the entire United States arsenal. You should win, right? Neither of them have military factories. You don't have civilian factories. You have a fucking dockyard, though? That blows my mind. An King here has way bigger population and probably more troops. Well, you had your shot. The Panamanians have begun a small-scale military assault into the Coto region of Costa Rica, which they have had a claim on for some time. We should threaten intervention to prevent this from turning into a full-scale war. I've never seen them reject this. Hey, today could be the day. May Day, International. Oh, it's May! We'll put in a cut here, and I'll keep streaming. But if you're watching on YouTube, till tomorrow, toodaloo. Take care. See you then. Bye-bye. You know, comment, like, subscribe, all that bullshit. I don't really plug that bit so much anymore. Used to. If you're on the platform, you know how to engage with the platform. I'm not going to insult your intelligence by spamming you with it. Bye-bye.